what I'm going to start sharing with everybody here is I'm going to ask you in advance to be patient with me. I'm going to have to be a bit cryptic about this because we're going to start exposing some major networks and crime and a lot of harm to children, but we're going to bring it once we've got the evidence so strong that it's irrefutable. And until then, for operational security, I don't want to tip our hand and warn anybody what we're on to. But generally speaking, I want everybody to be aware of the dynamic that we're learning about. And that is what John F. Kennedy warned about in his speech before his murder, before his assassination, and that is the secret societies. And you can pick one. Most of them are all, in my opinion, by now, run the same way at the top. It seems like just a good old boys club, and a lot of people will defend it who are in it because they don't know until they get to the very highest levels. And they are read in on what the organization is really about. And then at that point, they're presented with evidence of what's going on at the top and how the philosophy differs entirely from what everyone from that top level on down has been led to believe. And it's very dark and even demonic. And that's where you'll find a lot of these secret societies are literally run by satanic cults. And for any of you that may not have had to deal with a lot of spiritual radicals or seen any of this or know people that are survivors or been in law enforcement and had to deal with a lot of these satanic cult groups, it may sound foreign to you and like, oh, it's somewhere way over there and it will never affect me and I don't know about it. I don't need to know about it. Well, that's not true. There's a great harm that's done, not only to the children, because once you realize that every satanic cult group has at its core harm to children, that's where they get their power from. The false gods, the demon gods, Baal and Moloch dictate that the practitioners of these satanic cults do unthinkable things to children. And I'm not going to drag you through the gore and the heart-wrenching evidence here and now, but we have been interviewing so many survivors, and you can tell when they're just relaying what they've been through, all of their stories, you can see where they've dealt with the same people over the years, the same cult groups, some of the same locations, a lot of the same types of ceremonies, and the same intent behind the ceremonies. And so when you care about children, it pays to pay attention to why there's so much harm being done to children. If you listen to Jonathan Cahn talking about his new book, or you've read his new book, Return of the Gods, he talks about the return, and it's not really the return, it's the resurgence of three identifiable demons. And they are false god, apparently high-ranking demons in Satan's realm on the spiritual side. Now, realize, if just because you may not know about this or you don't believe in this doesn't mean that these people who are harming children don't believe in it, because they do, and it's their motive for a lot of the harm. So that's why I'm sharing this, because everybody needs to understand what the impetus is, what the inspiration, what rancid little voice is being spoken into mankind's ear to do this to children on an industrial scale. And how many institutions has it saturated for it to get this bad? How many are on board covering up the harm, going along with the harm, looking the other way with the harm, are leveraged by it, or however else? We see a huge network of just rancid. There's a rancid swamp, and I call it the war on children, because if you look at all the ways that the children are being destroyed, it's not organic, it's not natural, it's not anything that happens without a concerted effort to destroy millions of children worldwide. And whatever your stance is on abortion or women's health care, what's going on with Planned Parenthood, you got to look behind the scenes. Margaret Sanger founded that. She was a white supremacist. It's all about eugenics. Same thing the Nazis were about. Eradicate all other races, but the Aryan race that they subscribed to. That's what Margaret Sanger was about. That's what eugenics are about, and that's what Planned Parenthood was founded on. So it shouldn't come to any surprise, especially to people of minority groups, because it's in minority neighborhoods that Planned Parenthood sets up their murder clinics, their women's health care. And that's why it's told and spun that way. It's crafted. That message is crafted by committee, and they have think tanks, and they're very intelligent, talking about very intelligent, world-class power brokers who are after total world power, and 90-something% of the world power is not enough. They have to have absolute tyrannical power so that nobody can challenge them ever again, and they can do literally whatever they want to people. If you've ever seen any of the movies where there's a bad villain, a Dr. Evil type character, it's literally how these people think. And why? Because they're in a Luciferian cult and they literally worship evil. A lot of them don't merit the positions that they have, the authority, the power, the wealth that they have. They get there because a lot of them are weak. Well, they wouldn't do this if they weren't really weak charactered people. But imagine the most insecure, least likely to be in these positions, and they're easy targets for those that are in these cult groups at the top of these institutions. And they can target somebody that they see as weak. Hey loser boy, come here. What do you think about being a part of this higher rank structure? Oh, I would do anything. Well, they'll present them a little bit of this, a little bit of that. If you've ever seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut, the way that people are brought to these parties, these gatherings, this is the kind of thing that went on Epstein's Island with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and others. They do this all over the world, folks. And we know of numerous locations and instances where this has happened. I guarantee you, anybody that's very high level in Hollywood or in the political realm has been invited to one of these parties and has either seen that which is morally objectionable and gone along with it, and then gone to a next party where there was something worse and gone along with that, and then been initiated and indoctrinated into literally a satanic realm where they are then brought in and given the big roles, the big films and all that, or they've declined and said, man, that ain't for me, and then they were shut off from the higher levels of films unless they do just wholesome films that this global cabal is not into making. So it's like that in so many institutions without barrier. I say without barrier because I'm talking about even institutions that people believe are wholesome and good, and even some that pretend to be only all about good. I would say in many of them, 90 to 95% of the people in certain institutions are most likely unwitting to what's being done at the very, very top, the very highest level. And then there's a cutoff. You don't get into those higher ranks unless you are initiated and you sell your soul and they control you. So they're going to have you on film raping children. They will have that, or you will not be invited in. They're going to have you murdering children, or you're not going to get into the very highest ranks, and you are going to be one of them, and you're going to practice these heinous rituals and abuses, or you're not going to stay there. You can't leave because they can't afford for you to talk. And the ones that do talk are made examples of, harsh examples of, tortured to death. And if you think this is all far-fetched, I would say just start researching. And when I founded Veterans for Child Rescue, I just wanted to stop people from raping children. I knew that there was a lot of trafficking, and I knew that they were hiding it right under the public's noses. I knew that they were doing it sometimes out of nice homes, out of restaurants, things like that, where people didn't know to look for it, so that it was covert. There's a lot of corruption in order for this type of domestic operation run at industrial scale to be run with impunity, seemingly with the cooperation of every level of authority in our country. Otherwise, there would be a war on this and it would be eradicated. But too many people are compromised, too many people are in on it or benefit from the way that it is. They corrupt status quo. They don't want it to change. I'll say this, God bless the law enforcement units that operate with us, because we've got a 100% conviction rate and we've got a proven operational template, and we do not play around, and we operate very professionally, very cleanly with our law enforcement allies, and we've got great relationships with them. But in most major cities, DAs will not prosecute entire categories of crimes because there's a certain globalist billionaire that funds their campaigns to get them in those seats, with the agreement that they will not prosecute entire categories of harmful crimes in that district or county, including child sex and child rape crimes.